that came up today. Oh, thank you. I had a topic that came up today, which is an interesting one, which is um, basically, Jennifer, I think you're in, Gary, where are you based?
I'm in the Denver area.
Okay.
I'm not a club owner, but been around tennis a long time, and we are members at the Ranch Country Club, and it's gone through a lot of changes in the last 3 years. So,
Right. And this is kind of where my question for the day is where Jennifer is on the west coast of Florida. And I know Sean, we touched on this last week. Glad to see you back, Sean. But if you think about it, gated communities like gates, right? And so I'm at one that's a smaller community, maybe 300 doors, and they are sometimes pressed because they are supporting not just the tennis, but they're supporting a golf course and they're supporting a beach club, and there's only 300 doors. Whereas on both sides of us, where I work in the winter, where I help out in the winter, we have two much bigger communities, one of like 500 doors and then one of like 1,300 doors in Johns Island, which is a famous gated community in Vero Beach. So, these smaller communities have to carry more, that each household has to carry more. Now, here's the interesting thing. You ready for this? If a gated community such as the one where I am, I won't say where it is right now, but say they do this, say they say, okay, when you buy a house, you have to join the club. And there used to be several levels of membership. There used to be a social membership, which would include golf. It didn't include golf. It included tennis, the beach club, and food. Then you'd have a golf membership, equity golf. And that used to be, say, $85,000. And the social membership was $40,000. Now what they're doing, a lot of these gated communities, as AKA clubs, gated clubs, are saying, no, we're going to go flat fee, $150,000 or $100,000, and you get everything. Well, guess what? A tennis only player is not going to go spend $100,000 or even $80,000 just to play tennis. And so we're kind of, golf and tennis are fighting a little bit like that, because these gated communities, Jen, I know you have a ton of them on the West Coast over there in Tampa, Naples, Bonita Springs, all that. They're going to this one membership fits all, and I think it's hurting tennis. Might be helping pickleball, because you hate to hear that, Jen, but because a lot of golfers play pickleball. So anybody else see that, Sean? I know you're with the HOAs. Jen, what are you seeing over there on the West Coast?
Oh, that's not really something I'm too familiar with, because I'm at a club. But there are a lot of gated communities here, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Why do you think that it would hurt tennis?
Because no one's going to spend that amount of money. They're not going to go spend with a golf. If you're a tennis only player, if you're a tennis only person, you're not going to spend the amount of money equivalent to a golf membership to live in a gated community and not play golf. So no matter what, everyone that's applying or buying property in the gated communities where this is happening appears to be a golfer. That's not a problem. I'm happy golf is top of their list. But I do think tennis and maybe pickleball and maybe some of the other, maybe, I don't know what other sports there are, croquet or, whatever they might be out there, is probably suffering a little bit, because it's that high end. The golf is the high cost. And I see it at clubs, the country clubs too, where you are.
I can run with this.
Yeah, go ahead. Go, Sean. Run with it.
The difference between my experience at a country club and then also in the local areas here in the Atlanta area, the local neighborhoods, tennis is free. To play tennis, it's free. Now, almost nowhere is golf free, and often it's really expensive. But if you say, all right, we got tennis, golf, we got all these really cool things, and I'm just the tennis player, you want 150 grand, it is never going to happen.
Exactly.
I'm not paying for everything else. Never going to happen. I'm going to play in my own neighborhood, and I'm going to play at my friend's place. Like $150,000 buys a lot of other things, buy a lot of tennis rackets for my tennis that I'm going to play across the street for free. Now, golfers are going to pay that. They have to. They want to be part of that elite club to play that course. That course might be worth it. That club, the social side, that might be worth it. But tennis courts are shaped the same.
Gary, what's story on Colorado? I know you've got gated communities out there. Denver, Aspen, Vail, all out there has gated. What's going on out there?
I'm not aware of that many gated communities in Denver, but there's country clubs. At the club that I belong to, it was a member-owned club, and they've struggled as a member-owned club. And then just about the time the pandemic hit, they were purchased by Concert Golf, which is they have 8 or 10 properties around the country. I think they've got something down in Atlanta. And one of the things they're pushing for is to reduce the types of memberships. They had tennis memberships, junior tennis memberships, social memberships, and they're going the direction that you're saying. At the moment, it works out pretty well for the tennis is doing very well.
That's good.
In part because we're the only indoor facilities on the north side of Denver. All the indoor facilities are in the middle part of the town and the southern part of the town. So tennis is doing well, and the cost of some of the clubs is not as great as it is. There's a club like Cherry Hills, which is in the middle of Denver. It's the old golf course. They've had several national tournaments there, and tennis. They've got wonderful tennis facilities, but tennis is that's what the wives of the owners do. And I think they may have changed this, but it used to be only men could have memberships. So when I said owners, that's what I meant. But it's
so Gary, you own a club, right? Isn't that right?
No. I've been involved in the USPTA in Denver for many years. I don't own a club, but we play. Our family plays at the ranch. We started at the ranch about 6 years ago. So we would have a place for our kids to play tennis during the winter.
Right. Jen?
Yeah, my former club here in Tampa, it's not an HOA, but my former club in Tampa, they used to have separate memberships too. Like one for tennis, one for fitness. And then they changed to, one membership for all that covers everything, And I think people were pretty happy with that. They're actually a company that is based out of Denver. It's called Wellbridge. And they have a club here in Tampa.
They own your club, Jen?
They own my former club.
Former club.
Yeah. It's a corporate club. Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously I've written about this on the blog and on the website, but Sean brings up a good point, is that corporate owned clubs and member owned clubs have different profit motives, right? And so an HOA, like I think Sean, you've got a bunch of those HOAs down there, they are not really looking at profits, but they're looking at property prices. So they want to make sure they're offering, right? They want their offerings to be, and that again, here you go. Gated clubs, like the ones I work at, I was talking to a committee member today and they're like, well, Ed, I said, hey, you want to get the best directors at golf, the best directors that you can, the best program you can offer, because it's only going to bring in your property prices up, right? A gated community club is like a gated HOA in a way. It's all about property prices as well as being a club. Very similar.
You have to have a budget for programming. So HOAs in our world, there's no programming budget. The question is, do we allow outside coaches to come in or do we not? Now, if you don't, you're never going to have any tennis.
Right.
But it isn't as though they're going to hire a coach to come work here. Now in Florida, you have a lot more of that. The neighborhoods, in my experience, they're going to have clay courts more often. They're going to require kind of full-time maintenance. They're going to need a full-time staff, even in some of the neighborhoods that aren't necessarily clubs, so to speak.
Right.
like a small club in a local neighborhood. Am I remembering my Florida
You're-
market well there?
You're right. The gated communities here, if they're not a club inside, and hi, Seattle M. Gray, I see you on Instagram there. Welcome to the conversation. You can always text us if you have questions. But you know, if you look at the gated communities in Florida, you see much more in terms of, I guess, facilities, right, than you do in Denver or even Atlanta, probably, where it's just a couple courts or, you know, maybe there's a pool. Right, Sean?
Yeah, because that's all we are. There's no budget. The goal of the HOA is to build its reserves and save as much money as possible. And the members have to beg and beg and beg and try to get things working. I was just recently appointed the tennis committee chair of my HOA. Our neighborhood's less than 2 years old. It's all brand new homes. We just moved in this past May.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife isn't excited about it. She doesn't like getting involved with things like that because it's drama. And but
I've been there, done that.
I'm the right guy for the tennis job here in my personal neighborhood. Whether I run a business here or not, I should advise on tennis questions.
The politics of HOAs, they're in, I mean, I live in an HOA, right?
Yeah,
And
and
just,
it's a unique thing.
it was the biggest politics to try to get three courts. You know, the three courts have gone to pot with clay here.
Yeah.
And obviously there was a big argument about making one a pickleball court. And I was like, guys, we have tons of space for pickleball. Leave the tennis courts and just move pickleball over to the side. We have a croquet lawn that no one uses. You know?
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
at our last place, they turned the putting green that nobody ever. It's a cool little idea.
Yeah, it looks beautiful, right? But no one ever uses it.
Yeah, the builder puts it in and says, "Hey, this will bring in new people." Well, when the people don't want it, you turn it into something else.
Right. Right.
But it's a different feeling. We have to do the same thing here. What we're trying to figure out, and I had some questions about kind of the New England market where you were previously, but it sounds like you're back comfortable in Florida.
Well, Jen and I are one of these migratory bird types. Jen goes up to Martha's Vineyard and I go and wave at her across Buzzards Bay, and I'm in Marion on the mainland. So we go back and forth. I head up May 5th, May 1st, and Jen goes up. Lucky her, she has a much shorter season. She goes like, when are you going up this year, Jen?
Probably around Memorial Day. Memorial Day
Oh, that's
weekend.
earlier than normal. Good. I'm glad you're going up earlier. You gotta make some money up there. Huh?
Last year I went on Memorial Day. I was Memorial Day through Labor Day, basically.
Labor Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, Kristen Sanders, we see you there on Instagram. Nice. Thanks for being here. Yeah. So the summer up there, those are different, Sean. Those and Gary, I'm sure you know that, and I'm sure they're in Denver too. But the clubs up there are really seasonal. You know, even getting into New York State, but in New England, I mean, like Martha's Vineyard. I was on Martha's Vineyard for 5-6 years. Here, I'm wearing the old shirt from Edgartown Yacht Club. And my first year, I was able to go there June 11th. I mean, the season doesn't really kick off until June 23rd when the kids got out of school. Everyone comes out of Boston and New York. And then literally the season is 8 weeks. And August 15th, it starts to peter down again. And by Labor Day, after Labor Day, the vineyard is empty. You can get into every restaurant. For my club on the mainland, it's a different demographic slightly. It's changing towards the vineyard, but we're like 60-40, probably 60% of our members live year round in Marion, Mass, right on the water there. And then 40% are destination people who come in from Boston and New York and Chicago for the summer to be in the New England summer. It's kind of like my daughter. So those clubs are changing too. There's a demographic change there up and down the East Coast. A lot of them are becoming more destination rather than year round. And then again, you could argue that some are becoming more year round. I think mine might be, it depends because people want to get out of the cities from COVID. So we'll see what happens over the next 2 to 3 years. If COVID hadn't happened, mine would have gone 50-50, right? Year round destination members. Now, because of COVID, maybe mine's gone up 65-35, where it would have gone the other way. So, you know, more people staying out of the city. How about Sean? Are you in the suburbs? And so are you seeing people moving out of Atlanta to the suburbs like they are in New York? Is that happening?
Yeah, it was a fascinating house search. My wife and I were looking. We needed a tennis court, of course. I'm a tennis guy, so finding a neighborhood with tennis courts narrowed it down. But what we were finding is we had a lot of people coming in from up north, and a lot of people buying 5-bedroom homes with small square footages. And that's it's not as common of a thing. We're building physically different homes here because people are working from home more. The kids are staying home from a school point of view. Once or twice a month, they have just stay home and work from home days. So
Right.
everybody needs their own space. And my wife and I were looking for openness. We don't need that many bedrooms. It's just us right now. Because the kids are off doing their own thing. But we didn't need the 5 separate bedrooms. It's really a unique thing that we see people moving south into the suburbs with homes with lots of bedrooms, but not that same open square footage. So everybody can kind of close their door and do their own work.
Right.
And the tennis courts it's an interesting thing. It's kind of high, medium, and low from a financial standpoint. You move into a nice gated community that you could still have the typical HOA like we do. We're ungated, typical suburban neighborhood with 2 tennis courts. So you drive by, you could come right in and use our courts if you really want to. Gated communities is kind of a step up, but you can still run it the same way. Then you have the country club neighborhoods where there's a club and a tennis pro who's hired to work there, and then they can hire their own staff.
Right.
Here, it's like our HOA is going to obviously whitelist me because I'm gonna help them set everything up, and I would be the go-to coach here. But this neighborhood would never have a coach that runs programming.
Okay. Gary, what do you see out there in terms of the clubs? Like, are people moving out of Denver? I mean, Denver, I don't know what the COVID politics is out there at all.
The politics is no different anywhere else. I think the most in-migration is into the mountain areas. People are just getting out of the mountain, getting out of wherever, either Denver or or Texas or other states, and they're moving into the mountain areas, and places like Steamboat and Aspen and Vail are seeing an influx of people. I will say that Denver, the county of Denver, is one of the last to recover in terms of employment. So what this says is people are working from home, and I think that could really benefit local clubs. For instance, we live about 20 minutes north of Denver, and if people are going to stay home, it could benefit tennis at our local club and at the local summer club on the other side of town. So I think the remote working could benefit tennis because the suburbs are closer to where the country clubs are or the tennis facilities are.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting for us. We were approached Beyond the Baselines was approached by an HOA in Vail, and they are with a current management firm, and they wanted to look at other management firms to manage I think they have 7 courts, 7 tennis, maybe 6 pickle. And the housing is tough, out there in the mountains, like to find housing in the summer. But what the committee chair was saying to us is similar to what you were saying, is that a lot of these people, this is a very high-end HOA in Vail, and a lot of the people are from California, and they're going out now. If they don't have kids, they're going out like even during ski season till April and staying right through to September, like staying out there. And, it goes from ski right into early spring tennis right through the summer. Whereas it used to be much like Sean, we were just talking about in New England, where it was like June 25th to August 15th. That's not so much now. People from California are just going out to Colorado, Arizona, I think, and spending 3 to 6 months out there. And maybe, I know it's happening in Florida. A lot of people are trying to stay here 181 days so they get the Florida no income state tax and become Florida residents. So there's a lot of movement and change with COVID right now, a lot.
There's a lot. We have a lot of summer clubs. The one thing that Denver has is we have weather. It didn't snow in Denver until late December. So
Right.
it's possible that you can play outdoor tennis in October, November, and December. The high school tennis season usually starts at the end of February. So it's possible to play outdoor tennis 9 or 10 months a year in Denver, and it may not be that way in other places. Now it's not always as enjoyable as playing at an indoor club, but it can be doable.
Well, what do you think, Jen? What's your next question? I want to. You had like so many questions you wanted to say. Now you're going, I don't have any.
No, I was just thinking about what you guys are. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just thinking about what you guys are talking about. It gets me thinking about like these new tennis centers that are being built, like USDA National and like the Rome Tennis Center, that are so big. And I always think, how do they keep these courts busy? Like, there's no way that they're always busy, just because things are changing and people, are leaving the cities and doing different things. And tennis is, I think, more and more accessible, with HOAs, obviously not for every community, but I don't know, it just got me thinking about that for some reason. Like, it's so crazy to me to think about 100 tennis courts. Like, how do you keep 100 tennis courts busy?
Well,
in the South, in our area, you mentioned Rome. It just got me thinking that in our area, basically you run one major junior tournament a month and you're paying for that facility, because you've also got probably taxpayer dollars that built it. So you're not paying a mortgage. So you end up with a giant facility that you can do whatever you want with. You run one major junior tournament a month. You bring in one ITF a year, and you've paid your bills. Your coaches are there. You hire your pro. They hire 8 or 10 people to start feeding balls. You take 5% of everything that they do, and you can kind of pay your bills at a system like that, unless you get USPTA to come in and take it over.
Yeah.
Or Amy Pazahanik for the Agape. She's taken over everything in DeKalb.
Yeah, and she's doing well at that one location. She's got an interesting scenario because she stretches herself too thin, in my opinion, kind of trying to do too much. But she's done well here. DeKalb runs well. She's got a good response from the city of Atlanta, so there are no complaints there.
That's good. So she was on my podcast. I will say this. Yeah, she was excellent on the podcast, and she just added another town out in California. I think I saw on her Instagram. But Simon Gale, who's also on my podcast, who's the head pro or director of tennis at the USTA National Tennis Center. He talk about demographic changes because of COVID. Now they have 140 courts. It's insane amount of courts out there. And as Jen says, how do you fill those? And when they built that, he kind of intimated or implied that they were expecting people to fly in from around the country and use it. And now what has become, because of COVID, not as many people coming to Florida as a destination for a week or two. It's a lot of regulars who are locals, and it's become like a local club until we get all back to normal and there's more travel. Although it says that we're always going to have masks on planes now, so who knows? Not looking forward to my next plane trip. But yeah, those demographics are changing, and we'll see what happens. Gary, any burning questions on your end?
I think you mentioned the demographics. I think one thing to keep in mind is that the oldest millennial is now 40, and the youngest boomer is 56, and that's a big change over the last 10 years, and that's going to affect tennis. There's also the declining fertility rate, which means there are fewer young kids today than there were 10 years ago. This is going to affect our schools. It's going to affect tennis. It's going to affect the way going to affect housing. It's going to affect Social Security and how that's paid. There's a lot of impacts. I don't know how tennis is going to react to that.
That's a great point. You know, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about the 16 years between the millennials and the last baby boomer and the dropping off of the fertility rate, which is probably that group, isn't it? It's that group. It's the 30s to 44s, 28s to 33s, somewhere in there. And I hadn't thought of it that way. That's interesting. Demographic change is going to affect sports and housing and HOAs and country clubs. Interesting point, Gary. Really good point.
It's going to be, well, and not only is that happening, but the fertility rate is declining across the different races and ethnicity and ethnic groups. So it's not just whites. It's, I think if you look at the US population, the US white population was less in 2020 than it was in 2010. Just a smidgen. So the growth that occurred was in different races and ethnic groups. So it's changing in a lot of different ways.
Yes, it is. There's Jennifer, the Venezuelan here in America.
That's right.
Just throw that in there, right? But yeah, we have a lot of different demographic changes among ethnicities. And I'm going to throw one question out because I do have to leave 5 minutes early today because I'm driving down South Florida to play a tennis tournament. But wanted to throw this out there. And I love the play on words, the Novak's Djokovic.
I was gonna say, are we gonna address the elephant in the room? Are we not gonna talk about it?
But what a story this morning. The immigration minister for Australia has rescinded his visa. And as I read it, I read The Guardian down there in Australia, and I've read CNN, and sounds like if you get deported, you can't go back for 3 years. Kind of like our rules here in America. What does everyone think? Sean, take the mic. What do you think about the Novak's Djokovic?
Oh, I'm conspiracy minded to begin. I think it's all planned so the Australian Open can share that they treat everybody equally. I think everybody was on board with that whole story.
Okay, Mr. Conspiracy Theorist.
Exactly. I'm rarely right about it, but it's just so much more fun to think of it that way for me.
What do you think? What do you think, Gary?
Yesterday I was in Castle Rock, which is in South Denver. No masks are required there. I live in Broomfield, which is North Denver. Masks are required. I have friends who have died from COVID. I understand that there's a lot of political games being played associated with COVID. It will be great when the election's over, because if the medical part of it's over, then I think
We'll have a free election.
Yeah, I think we'll see the different. I think it'll be handled differently.
Jen, the elephant in the room is yours.
Oh my gosh. It's been such a roller coaster, right? At first they said he's not going to be allowed to play. And I was like, okay, well, that's fair because that's Australian law, you know, they have to, that's what they have to go by, the Australian Open. And then it seemed kind of like they were making their own rules. They let him in, then it's a yes, then it's a no. It's just like, to me, it's just crazy. Like they just need to leave it to their government, figure it out. I think it's been interesting, the response also from the French Open, because they at the beginning they were like, well, we'll let Novak play. And to me, it's like, I don't know, I'm of course, I'm a science person. I'm all about getting vaccinated and all that. But to me, it's like, I feel like the Grand Slams in that sense should get together and be like, you know, we are going to require vaccination from our athletes to play, but that's just my stance. You know, I think it should be a requirement for the tournament. that the players are vaccinated. I mean, how is that not a thing?
Hey, there was the article in the Guardian said, how do you get to Australia to play? Get vaccinated and do your paperwork correctly. I mean, that's kind of obvious. It's not
I
that
still think
difficult.
he'll play. I don't think that he's gonna get deported. I think
He's history. He's going to get deported, but I'll
no
be honest.
way.
Yes, way. He hurt himself because he said he tested positive. Then there's pictures of him on Instagram and
No, that's so
and then he partying with kids, and they're going to use him as an example. It has nothing to do with and what I do think they're a little worried about is his reception and protection at the Open if he were to play. But
exactly. I was
I
like,
think
if
they're a little
he
worried about
plays,
that.
he's gonna get booed so hard, first of all, if he does get to play. But then at the same time, sometimes that kind of drives him. So
Of
maybe
course.
he would do better. So,
Well, and let's bring this
It'll be a
back.
mess.
Let's bring this back to tennis. They're all at 20, the big three, right? And this, I think, and Sean and Gary and Jen, please, and whoever's on Instagram, write to me and let me know. But I think this is his best chance right here. He's not as good on clay. I think this is it. If he's going to get to 21, this is probably the best chance he has. And by the U.S. Open, he's another 8 months older, and we'll see what happens. But my bet is that he's deported, and the issue with deportation is the reciprocals or the repercussions. Because if you're deported, you normally can't go back 3 years. So we'll see what happens.
That would be
But
crazy.
his lawyers will work on that, I'm sure.
Oh,
But guys, I've got to go today. I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap it up a little early, but I'm so glad you guys were here today.
well,
and
get
all
the
of-
popcorn.
Get the popcorn.
Get the popcorn out. We'll see what happens with Novak.
We'll be the Novaks. We'll be here next week, next Friday, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Gary, please come back. Sean, great to see you 2 weeks in a row. Thank you. All you guys on Instagram, thank you too for watching. And Ed Shaniffy signing off from Beyond the Baselines. Have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy.
All right. Have a good one,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye.
Take care,
Bye.
guys. Bye-bye.